Peace, love, knowledge, and freedom, and welcome to another exciting episode of Frail Conversations. And today, as you've seen from the title, we're going to be talking about religion and masculinity, specifically religious masculinity. And I was originally going to kick this off with the disclaimer and shit, like, you feel me? It's going to get very, you got to be, I ain't giving no disclaimers no more. One of my travelers, and shout out to her. Shout out to one of my travelers and just consistent listeners, Fatima. She told me something that was like real touching and real igniting in a way. She was like, stop doing that. Basically, she was like, we here. Those who are supposed to be here are here. You feel me? Those who ain't supposed to be here ain't here. You feel what I'm saying? You don't have to give those disclaimers. We know what we're in for. You're 12 seasons in, basically, and we know what we're in for. So that kind of really, hit on the head because, and it ties into this episode. I'm not just talking about this for nothing, but that kind of hit on the head because this entire podcast, all of this is just recordation for when I have kids and there's difficult conversations that I'm probably going to be afraid to have with them directly, or, I get cut short before I can give them the necessary lessons that I want to give them sometimes. So I really pour my all into this podcast, not for adults and you humans, but mainly solely for children that are going to come into this world, because at some point I'm not going to be able to tell them everything I need to tell them. I'm not going to have everything I need to say to them. So I kind of set this up for them. So it's raw, cut, and unfiltered for them. You know what I'm saying? And the way in which it ties into this episode, because when we look at our masculinity, when we look at what masculinity, there's a direct correlation between religion, how religion plays out, and it's tied to masculinity. And I know a lot of people say, well, we're in a patriarchal society. We're in a religious patriarchal society. It's also misogynistic. And that has nothing to do with masculinity. Those things have been in place to make sure masculinity does not emerge. And it's one thing to assume that that's the case, but it's another thing to actually understand and know the history and the science behind how this became possible. All right. When I first started this little thing that I'm on, these So Frail conversations, it started with So Frail because I always wanted to revive masculinity. And I've been telling everybody for a long time, masculinity and religion will always clash. If your masculinity doesn't clash with religion, you're not masculine. And a lot of people have always, it always came back to the same bullshit for me. With me is like, well, I believe in Jesus, I do this, or I believe in Allah and Muhammad. I said, I don't care what it is that you believe in. We're in a space now where you need to understand. There's 4 levels of the mind: belief, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You need to get to the state of understanding when it comes to this shit. Religion and masculinity do not go hand in hand. Religion neutralizes masculinity by default, because masculinity, and let me go ahead and set the definition for anybody who's new, thinking I'm just going to be talking about random shit. Masculinity, especially if you read So Frail 1, 2, and 3, is the spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. Anytime I mention masculinity, I am speaking on the spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. I'm not talking about what these other motherfuckers is talking about. I don't give a fuck about what these other motherfuckers is talking about. I'm talking about masculinity as defined as the spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. And that definition alone is in contrast to religion. Those two things don't go hand in hand. Because if you truly analyze and deconstruct your religion, you have no desire to believe in it anymore. You have no need to believe it anymore. And it serves no use when you truly analyze and deconstruct it. But as long as you believe in it, your masculinity will always be tainted. You'll find difficulty separating fantasy from reality. And you'll never truly evolve. One thing that I learned about history is like, why was religion so pressed? Why was religion so pressed? When I look at what religions were actually pushed the most. You know what I'm saying? Religion ain't a choice. Religion ain't a choice. Religion is the very thing that emasculates men. It's the first thing that emasculates men because, again, sticking to the definition, emasculation is to take away a man's ability to analyze and deconstruct his world. The very first thing I give you is that I understand the highest conceptualization of your deity better than you, and you have to accept it the way I give it to you. I'm gonna let that breathe for a second. Because we are told that we have to follow a religion without questioning it, given to us from somebody who's oppressing us. The God of your enemy is your devil. When you're serving the same God as your enemy, you are literally serving the devil. Now, we're going to get into those things of devils and gods and demons and angels and all of that shit and how it relates to masculinity. You feel what I'm saying? But it needs to be known that that is the quintessential piece of why masculinity is gone. I don't care if it's Islam. I don't care if it's Christianity, Judaism. Those are the big three. Fuck the big three, nigga. It's just big me. Nah, let me stop. I'm gonna be serious. As fucking this one. You can call me woke, you can call me whatever. I'm gonna be serious as fucking this one. Right? But every one of those religions leverages patriarchy, which patriarchy is the neutralization of masculinity. I never really understood it. I never understood how, because until I actually started to study the past, started to study the matriarchy, started studying things of that nature. Like in Africa, in Africoid systems, they always said, oh, we were once in matriarchal societies where the woman ruled. No, women did not rule. See, as long as you continue to, this is why masculinity is important, analysis and deconstruction. As long as you continue to view everything of history through the lens of the Caucasian teachings, you always miss what you're supposed to see. So instantly, once we say, since patriarchy is failing, we should have been on matriarchy. And because we should have been on matriarchy, we think that women ruled. Women didn't rule. Women didn't lead. What matriarchy initially began as, you are who your mother is. And this was biologically, you are who your mother is because of the mitochondrial DNA. Patriarchy said, you are who your father is, and we're going to take that away. That is the first instance in which you violate analysis and deconstruction, which is when you start to violate nature by its own natural rules, which is what masculinity honors. Masculinity doesn't go against nature once it analyzes and deconstructs anything, because it is what it is, not what we want it to be. But before we dive heavy into that, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Seen the Light. Be sure to check out my website at imjustseen.com to get all things that are just seen. To all those who tip, donate, and sponsor to the podcast, you are greatly appreciated. To all those who would like to tip, donate, and sponsor to the podcast, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the podcast. Not the episode, but the podcast itself. Cash App and PayPal are just fine. And you know the vibes. That's for this and that's this for that. That's that for this and that's this for that. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into So Frail conversations, religion and masculinity. And don't forget to visit imjustseen.com. There, you can get all things Just Seen. You want to add the So Frail series to your library? Visit imjustseen.com. You want to learn how to master the markets for serious trading and investing? Visit imjustseen.com. You want to get your hands on some exclusive merch like tees, hoodies, coffee mugs, hats, bags? Visit imjustseen.com. Are you thinking about transitioning into the plant-based lifestyle? Visit imjustseen.com. You ever want to just chat with Seen about anything from simple advice to mentorship? Visit imjustseen.com. Anything and everything that is me, you can find at imjustseen.com. So take a quick peek into my world to see why being just seen is nothing less but always more. Because you never really know what you need until you see it, and you will never see it unless you visit imjustseen.com. All right. Welcome back. Ow. And I'm going to go ahead and flow from where I was at. If you could tell, like, I'm kind of excited in this episode. Like, it's the downloads, the message, everything is coming in very, very fast. So if I get excited and talk fast, just try to keep up, because this is going to be what it needs to be. So when I tell people, we'll kick it off like this. When I tell people that patriarchy is not masculinity, it is toxic femininity, That's what I meant when I segueing off of where we just left off from the commercial before we, went to break. Patriarchy is not masculinity, it is toxic femininity. Now, sticking to definitions so niggas know what the fuck I'm talking about as I'm going. Femininity is the spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of synthesis and construction, as spoken in So Frail 2. When you are using synthesis and construction in a negative way, it becomes destruction, which is, by large, toxic femininity. So whenever I say toxic femininity, I'm not talking about ratchet women. I'm not talking about women with nasty attitudes and shit like that. I'm not talking about that shit. I'm talking about destruction. War, famine, anything that doesn't synthesize and construct or nurture and sustain and switches to the other side where it does the exact opposite, that's toxic femininity, right? The world is run by men who are exhibiting toxic femininity. I've been saying this shit since So Frail 2. But now it's going to be understood what I mean by that. Because the religion puts you in place to be toxic feminine. Now, a lot of people say how? How can that be the case when if you look at patriarchy, everything, the figurehead is a father, the figurehead is a man. The figurehead is a father and the figurehead is a man to make sure that men do not become fathers and men. Yeah. God, Allah, Jehovah, the big three, they're not married to women. And I'm going to let you sit with that so you can process it. The big three in the religion, the big three deities are not married to women. In fact, they despise women in many ways. In so many ways that's how patriarchy and misogyny develops. You don't think like people be, and this will get me, they be like, they think they're thinking like men. No, you're thinking like a deity. You're thinking like a male deity and the male deity of the religion you follow, which is always weird because women will say they're creating the image and likeness of God and it's a man. You're a woman though. And you wonder why though you start to pick up the tendencies of a jealous, wrathful, and vengeful God. That's what the book says. The book says this is the type of God that you serve. And if you're creating the image and likeness of that deity, you're jealous, you're vengeful, and wrathful. And we can't understand why humans are acting the way that they're acting. They're acting like they're gods. That's the cult. Every cult has some kind of connection to a religious practice, specifically Christianity. Most cults are originated and created off Christianity. And it's not that cults are created off Christianity. Christianity is the cult. And those are offshoots. The denominations are just the offshoots of their own individual cults. But when everybody's participating in the cult, nobody sees that it's a cult until a motherfucker leaves outside of the cult and sees, y'all, we in a cult. But how do you understand when you're in a cult if you cannot analyze and deconstruct what is being taught, what is being spoken? This is where masculinity comes in. Again, this is why religion and masculinity cannot go hand in hand with each other. One thing that I've learned just studying my own history and my own people and shit, especially when it came to the enslavement of our people, buck breaking was very powerful. I always wondered, like, what was it? You know, a lot of people assume that it was just, the white guys would come over and rape the men into, to break them, to make sure that nobody would rebel. It wasn't just the strongest men physically. It was the strongest men mentally and the strongest men spiritually. It was the strongest men that they couldn't conquer. You cannot conquer a man if you cannot conquer his spirit. If you cannot conquer his spirit, it's because you cannot infiltrate him. You cannot dictate what his spirituality would be. Connecting piece on how I made this make sense. Shaka Zulu. We love to talk about Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu was a phenomenal warrior. You feel me? It took his stepbrothers or some shit like that to actually betray him in order for them to take him out. When we look at imperialism, when we look at how the missionaries came over and they indoctrinated the people, there was a lot of rape, there was a lot of pillage, there was a lot of plunder. But even deeper than that, there was something that kind of wasn't supposed to be. So when they came over, they would try to indoctrinate you with the illusion of what the religion held in it. One thing that they told Shaka Zulu was, if you don't convert to the religion, convert, the word is convert. I need y'all to understand that. Conversion means that you have to change forms into something. For every religion you follow, you have to be converted into it. Why? Because that means it's not natural to you. If the religion is not natural to you, the God of the religion is not natural to you, because the God only exists in the religion. If there is no Quran and there is no Islam, there is no Allah. If there is no Bible and there is no Christianity, there is no God. If there is no Torah and there is no Judaism, there is no Jehovah. Do you see what I'm saying? So for the deity to exist in your life, you have to understand the religion that's given to you, which means that in order to be converted, that shit's not natural to you. You dig what I'm saying? Okay. So tying it back to Shaka Zulu, when the missionaries approached him, the missionaries told him, if you don't convert, you'll go to hell. You'll burn in hell. And Shaka Zulu told him, where I'm from, we eat fire. Your level of spirituality, your understanding and your connection to nature, your connection to the real source is what would define and codify how you respond to that. You can't invoke a level. The highest punishment that any religion will give you is to burn in hell. When I don't fear burning in hell, that religion can't do anything to me anymore. That religion can't control me. You feel what I'm saying? Which means I can't be broken. And if I can't be broken, then that tells me that if I can't be broken, that's because my masculinity is intact and I'm still able to analyze and deconstruct my world. So when we look at the colonialism, I use Shaka Zulu as an example because that's what they had to overcome in order to convert people into Christianity. That's what they had to overcome to convert people into Islam. They had to mutilate them, destroy them, and kill them to say, you have to accept this. You feel me? Wars were built on this. And now when we put it in hand, it's like, again, studying from the Christianity perspective, and we can do it from the Islam perspective. The two greatest forms and atrocities opposed on black people are both the transatlantic slave trade and the sub-Saharan slave trade. We don't talk about those much. I mean, the sub-Saharan as well, but sub-Saharan was for 1,200 years, in which most of those people ended up becoming Islamic, which means that in those 1,200 years of enslavement, there was no natural ability. There was no natural connection. They had to be converted. How were they converted? By being mutilated, having their heads cut off, being tortured. Same shit in the transatlantic slave trade. Another thing with the transatlantic slave trade is that it kind of wasn't a transatlantic slave trade. They didn't bring people from Africa. They did. Let me say that. They didn't bring as many people from Africa as they claimed they did. And because the history has been so fucked up, it's like even people are telling the story that it's like, yeah, that's the beat. No, nigga, they were here indigenous wise. The people that they came over and met with Christopher Columbus and shit like that, they were here. They were the people that look like us, that look like me, that look like the people that are here. You feel me? That's why they didn't go anywhere. But what they couldn't tell you was that their spiritual connection, their spiritual system was tied to something that religion couldn't comprehend, that religion was not necessary for. This is why the people ended up being vilified as witch doctors, because they didn't need the medicine. This is why the people ended up being vilified under their spiritual practices, demonic and practicing hoodoo, voodoo, and all those things, because they didn't understand the spiritual component to it. When you truly understand the African spiritual systems, anyone, and I'm going to stop saying African, but I'm going to say Africoid, because now we on a level where we know what I mean when I say Africoid, and we know what they were alluding to when they said African. The African person that they're referring to is never about the landmass, it's about your genetics. Africoids are dominantly genetic. You feel what I'm saying? It doesn't matter where it falls, where the land falls. The actual genetics is what you need to focus on in the genome. The genetics say that we're all Africoid. But that's something totally different. But the Afrocoid people are the most spiritual. In order to capture spiritual, you have to give them a religion. You must give them a religion. When they tell you, why does everybody hate Haiti? Why is it? Because Haiti was the only one that said, fuck the religion. Give it back to them. We can't use it. And they tap back into the spirituality. That's why Haiti is so vilified. And Haitians are called demons. Haitians say they worship the devil or whatever the case may be. But when you actually put into context, again, more masculinity connecting to religion, spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. If I am serving the deity of my enemy, that has to be my devil. But if I'm serving the deity that my enemy is an enemy to, I am by default serving my God. Now, when we look at how they came over here, they already had things up. This is why they won't tell you things about the Mayans, the Incans, the Olmecs, or the Aztecs. They won't tell you about those. You have to go and understand the quote unquote Carib Indian, which ultimately became the Caribbean, right? The Carib Indian were the indigenous people that were already on the land. And these were the islanders that spread across the entire Americas. You feel what I'm saying? The Carib Indian, they called all of them Indians because he went the wrong way. He went the wrong way because the map was upside down. That's a different conversation that I can infuse into this conversation, but I don't really want to right now because I want to stick to how religion and misogyny just don't go together. You feel what I'm saying? When they landed and they saw the people being Caribbeans or Caribbeans, and as they, ultimately called them, the indigenous people that were on the Americas were scattered around this entire place. Right? When they met the men, they realized that this religion is not going to work with them. This religion is not going to work with them. So how do we get them to follow suit of the religion? First, we have to break the men. We have to put the religion in the women, and we have to make the women raise boys that will always create a relational connection to where there always has to be a mother-son dynamic. People say, why don't our relationships work? Why men won't grow up? Why men won't do X, Y, and Z? Why men can't do this, that, and the third? Is because there was that divide created a long time ago. Almost 500 years ago, for that specific reason. The man been gone. The masculine man was gone. So now you get the toxic feminine man who is a product of a mother-son relationship. It's not an accident. Religion did this. Because now, when you break the man, when they did the bug breaking or whatever the case may be, not only did they do the bug breaking in order to erase the attempt and the threat of the physicality of the man, it was to break the mental and spiritual of the man, but even more so break the emotionality and the emotionality of the woman in order to allow that religion to be taking place. You now made the woman take on the religion by breaking the man. You didn't have to actually beat the people all together. You had to take out the strongest force. There's a book called Battlefield for the Mind. Or Battle for the Mind, or Battlefield for the Mind, or whatever. I think it's Battlefield for the Mind, because Battle for the Mind is the one that's written by that lady that look like Joker and shit, Joyce Mayer. But I'm not joking on her because she looked like Joker, but the motherfucker looked like Joker, and that's who wrote that book. But in that book, it teaches you how severe trauma is how you change somebody's mind. If you don't want to, not only their mind, you change their reality, and you can shape how you want them to move going forward. You don't believe me? COVID did exactly that. It traumatized. Everybody was traumatized so long, and so long for such a long duration of time that they changed the mentality of the world. And it's almost like it was a psyop, and it's almost like people are looking at it like COVID never happened, while knowing that it did happen. Some people are completely evolved and changed, and they don't even realize it. When you can get a person into a state of trauma, you can make them change their reality, because this is how the mind works, right? The mind is altered. Now, when we talk about the chakras, if you read So Frail 3, and if you heard a couple of my episodes on chakras, right? The third chakra, right, is personal identity. It's personal identity. It's blocked by pride and shame, and it's affected by joy and pain, which means it's affected by trauma and euphoria. The two things that affect you and shape your personality are trauma and euphoria. Euphoria and trauma are literally opposite sides of the same coin. This is one of the reasons why drugs are the escapism that elicit us into euphoric states of mind, which makes the drugs alter our mind a certain way. But trauma, it opens us up from the opposite side Trauma opens us up from the opposite side to make our personality be shaped in that way. Because even if we go from the chakras, the first chakra, root chakra, is about foundation, survival. Second chakra is about your feelings. The third chakra is about your emotions. Feelings and emotions aren't the same thing. First, I'll manipulate your feelings into one of the two dynamics of joy and pain, trauma and euphoria. But mostly what they do is they trigger trauma in order to shape your personal identity. When I shape the personal identity, as Louis Farrakhan said, no nation, or was it the Elijah Muhammad? I don't know. It was one of those two. But no nation can rise as high as its women. When you traumatize the woman, right, by way of breaking the man in front of her, you can now give her the religion to follow. And if you do this enough generations, she'll now impart the religion into her child. And now you can get the tamed son that won't rebel against you. You can get the tamed son that will not analyze and deconstruct his world and make the necessary changes to get out of his situation. You get the toxic feminine son. The person who will synthesize it, who leads through synthesis and construction, but does it in a destructive way because men are supposed to be opposite to women. There's no analysis and deconstruction, and he's not willing to break down what has been imposed upon him. You feel what I'm saying? In So Frail 3, I mentioned how J. Edgar Hoover said, "We fear the rise of a black messiah." This was J. Edgar Hoover's words, the guy that's in charge of the COINTELPRO, the FBI, there's a lot of shit that they were actually doing. They said, as long as we know who still believes in a religion, as long as we know who still follows the religion, we don't have to worry about who's going to be the Messiah. Because they think a Messiah is coming. As long as we can continue to control their conceptualization of a Messiah, we don't have to worry about a Messiah coming back. Now, when I tell you what a Messiah is in So Frail 3, when you go back to Messiah deriving from Mashiach, and when you go back across the languages, you understand the Mashiach energy is the highest energy of the mind. Mashiach energy is what's considered Christ consciousness. This is why, while they're telling you to wait on Jesus, if you go back to the Bible, Christ was not his last name. It was his title. He was not Jesus Christ. He was Jesus the Christ, because his name, as it was from the Hebrew text, was Yeshua HaMashiach. Ha is the article that says the Christ, which means that he was the title of being anointed, which is something that you can ascend to, which even he says in the book. If you read Psalms 82 and 6, or whatever the case may be, it says ye are gods, right? Now, I've spoken that and I said that to people and they say, y'all are taking that out of context. That's not saying that you are God or whatever the case may be. It ain't my fault you don't want to be deity. That ain't got nothing to do with me. But then in John 10 and 31, Jesus doubled down and reaffirms and says, doesn't your word say that ye are gods? So if Jesus is taking it out of context too, then that means something is horribly wrong. You feel what I'm saying? But then again, Jesus was killed by Romans, which now ties us back into going back into the Rome episode that I mentioned there too as well, because now we have to bring all of this back in with the Council of Nicaea. The colonialism doesn't work without the imperialism and the religion. I always wonder, why was the religion so important? In the Council of Nicaea, Constantine and these other niggas, who was it? Constantine and the other niggas basically was like, yo, we want this, in order for Rome to rule and stand firm, we gonna need the world to believe in this religion. Again, I could be reaching on that one. If you heard the episode, you know what I'm saying, that shit. But the goal was to make sure Christianity was the number one religion of the world. But to do that, you have to enforce it in everybody. But you can only do that in the people that don't have the capacity to analyze and deconstruct anything, which means by default, I'm now having to take this religion and go against what's naturally masculine. Natural masculinity is analysis and deconstruction. Natural masculinity has to understand and break this down. I don't want you to understand anything. I want you to feel and believe in it and don't understand anything that I'm saying to you. And if you do understand it, we'll call you a heretic and ostracize you and excommunicate you from the church. That's what happened to Arius. Arius was the person that is responsible for the comeback when people say, well, there were Coptic Christians in Ethiopia. And you have to understand how Arius introduced that to them as this not being something that was real. He introduced it as the mythology in order to teach you the ritual, in order to get you to the level of allegory, to understand what this really was. That's what masculinity is. Arius was excommunicated because he told them, we cannot do this and make this something that you tell them is real, because it's not. We know it's Roman mythology. We know that this is Roman mythology. This isn't something that really happened. You guys made this up. We pieced this together and we made it up based off of the teachings of what we got from other people. And that's what they went into. So from the Council of Nicaea in the early ADs or whatever the case may be, it was 300 or something AD or whatever the case may be. From the Council of Nicaea, that's when they began to kind of do some COVID type shit. But they started to move in a way in which we're going to make sure that what is written here is going to be quote unquote divine ordinance. Divine ordinance, right? We're going to make sure that anybody that uses masculinity against this, and I'm not being dramatic, but I'm speaking real with it. Anybody who uses masculinity against this, analysis and deconstruction, you're going to be excommunicated. Because when you actually use your mind to think about something, and if something does not come out to be factual, or something does not come out to be what it's supposed to be, you have to let it go. And you have to call it out for what it is. But if somebody calls it out for what it is, we're going to excommunicate them, call them a heretic, call them crazy. We're going to keep them outside of the cult. Sure. Because they're not going to know that they're in a cult. Nobody's going to know they're in a cult because everybody's thinking this shit is normal. It's normalcy. Normalcy isn't always normal. Just because we came together and convinced everybody to believe in this shit doesn't mean everybody's supposed to believe in this shit. You dig what I'm saying? And that's the problem with belief. You don't have to know anything about it. You just have to trust the motherfucker that's telling you. You dig what I'm saying? So the Council of Nicaea decided to set that up. Right. Now, mind you, this is European shit. Then all of a sudden we have the fall of Rome, allegedly. The Roman Empire is the only empire to collapse and their religion not go with them. It takes masculinity to actually study history and look at it like that and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Why didn't that collapse too? Go study and I'm going to tie this to another point. Study any empire that fell, any sect of people, any dominant force of people on this world and on this earth that was considered an empire. Their religion went with them. And if their religion didn't go with them, their religion was reduced down to what? Mythology. The Greeks, when you look at the Hellenistic period, the Pantheon, oh, that was just mythology. That shit ain't really happened. You feel me? But even the Greeks had enough decency. And like I said in the Rome episode, we always look at the Greeks as the ones who stole our stuff. But there was something about the Greeks that's the Greco-Roman era was such a pivotal era because it was like, why were you two working together? They weren't. They were being robbed too. The Greeks were used, it's ironic as fuck, but the Greeks were used as a Trojan horse for the people. The Romans used the Greeks to infiltrate all the the African lands, all the African sciences, all the African thought processes, all the schools of thought, all of the information that was used, that was restored. The Greeks were used as the Trojan horse for that. This is why you get the Aristotles, the Platos, the Hippocrates. Hippocrates and Aristotle were two of the ones that were known to admit, yeah, we learned from the Africans. We learned from the Africans. So much so the father of modern medicine, which is Hippocrates, states that Imhotep is the god of modern medicine. Not even modern, he's just the god of medicine, and he sat at his feet. So when your quote unquote father is calling somebody a god, what does that mean for you? That means he's above them. You see what I'm saying? That means he's above him. So if he is truly above him, what does that now mean for your science? So now when you take that science, right, and now you repackage it, you now pass the baton off to the Greeks, and you make it seem like, okay, their religious practice, their empire fell, or whatever the case may be, Greco-Roman era, baton change, their shit fell. All of their information, though, we're going to keep. We're going to take everything that they said and we're going to translate it into Latin, and we're going to make sure that we keep it. This is one of the reasons why medical science is in Latin in the first place. Because it came from the Greeks, as the Greeks got it from the Kemetic people. They got science, they got mathematics, they got all of that shit from the Kemetic people. Then they got spirituality and magic from the Hebrew people. It fucks people's minds up when they know that Hebrews are magicians, which kind of contradicts everything, because they're like, no, the Hebrews are the chosen people. They're fucking magicians. They're magic. They're magical motherfuckers. When you understand anything hermetic, anything that is quote unquote occult, anything that is allegedly the dark sciences and esoteric and shit, its root and its basis founded in Hebrew esoteric science, which is what they convince you that the religion is supposed to be. No, but even now, when we go to the Hebrews, what does the book say? The Hebrews, which was by way of Moses was learned in the ways of the Egyptians. And he just let it go? No, he taught all of that information and put that information down in the religious texts in the books, if he were to put it in the book. But this was, again, written as mythology. Hence why he can write the first 5 books of a book, and he is born in the second book and dies before the third or fourth one is finished. How do you write 5 books and you... Again, masculinity and religion don't go hand in hand, because masculinity will always eradicate religion, because there's no need for belief when you cannot argue with reality. You dig what I'm saying? So let's keep spinning it back on the block. So the reason why I got into that, because from the Hebrews, the language that everything is founded on is basically off of the Hebrew shit. Hebrews are magicians. So they learn from the magicians and the scientists together. But even still, if the Hebrews didn't learn by way of the Egyptians, then everything came from Egypt. But then with everything coming from Egypt, everything evolved from Kemet, and everything that evolved from Kemet was passed down from Nubia and Kush. And it was passed down from Nubia and Kush because it segued out. Now, this episode I'm going to get into probably season 13. Y'all got to get caught up for that one when I talk about the Atlanteans, right? But when we look at Egypt, you have to go, I always say, you have to go back to Egypt, then you go up to Kemet, and then you go out to Nubia, Kush, and, all these other places. Because now when you get the Nubians, you also get the Americans, the real Americans, right? The Nubians in America would be considered the Mayans, the Incans, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs. The Nubians in the Americas, which ultimately became the Caribbeans, the Caribbeans, the Carib Indians, or basically the Haitians, the Puerto Ricans, the Dominicans, anything within that island area, the South Americans, the Brazilians, the people down there, and then of course us in America, whatever the case may be. Those were the Nubians in the Americas. So wonder why they got erased. They wonder why they got erased, but they couldn't get erased. Just like they did with the Nubians in Africa, on the African continent, they did the same shit here. They wanted to erase the history by trying to remove it, but they couldn't remove it fast enough. You feel me? Here in America, they X that shit. They said, we're going to write this and make it look like none of this was here. We're going to tell everybody we founded this shit. Like, we just found the new land. And then brought motherfuckers over here. Because to bring motherfuckers over here validates the religious story. It validates the religious story. And the reason why I said I was going to talk about Atlantis, because when we look at Atlantis being a lost city, Atlantis and El Dorado is the two specific points that I want to talk about. But from the quote unquote new age, new world that they were actually trying to create, they were always talking about looking for gold. The reason why they were always looking for gold, because they were looking for black people. Kemetic people, Nubians, those people, Nub means gold, never meant black. When we say Nubian, we say these are the black-skinned people. But from the actual culture of those black-skinned people, if you look at the Medu Neter, if you look at the actual Kemetic language, Nub always meant gold. So when they were going looking for gold, they were looking for black people. And they found it. They found black people. You feel me? But then they took and seen the culture being different. It was the same culture that was used to build the pyramids. If you don't believe me, all you have to do is look up the pyramids in North America. There's more pyramids in the Americas, specifically North America, than there are in Africa. Then there's pyramids in North America, South America, Central America, and Africa. There's more pyramids in North America than there are in Africa. They center the focus on the pyramids in Africa simply because they want you to say that's where the origin is. No, that's not where the origin is. The origin is at the basin, down in the Atlantic Ocean. Because that's where the Atlanteans once dwelled. And as the waters rose, because the ice age ended and the water started to melt, when the water started to rise, they started to spread out to colonize the other land masses. When we look at the world, it's not flat or round. It's both. Because you have to understand topography. This is why sea level is so important. This land, if you really pay attention to the fact that they give you all of the information, but they don't tell you what the information is. You can't study geography without studying topography. They teach you to know the location of the last landmass, but not know the significance of why that landmass is listed the way it is. Sea level is very, very important for a reason. Because the waters rose. And as the waters rose, the people climbed. And as they climbed out to the other continents. Pangea is not about the plate tectonics and earthquakes and all of the shit. Yeah, those things really happened, but the earth never separated. The waters rose. If you can visualize what I'm saying, the earth never separated, the waters rose. And as the waters rose, the way in which the mountains, the way in which the terrain really is, it's not flat. It's peaks and valleys, highs and lows in different areas. You have plains, you have different fields like that, but it's built from the bottom up. You feel what I'm saying? So you have to look at the earth from the top down, so it's both flat and round. You feel what I'm saying? This is why even in the Bible, it's talk about the firmament, the little dome that covers it, and you can look down from the top. And as you look down from the top, you have the different levels from the sea level, which gives you the topography. So now, as the waters rose, the people down in the Atlantic basin, which were the Atlanteans, started to rise, started to climb, and they climbed into the Americas, they climbed into the Africas, they climbed into the Australias, they climbed into any continent. There's only 6, but they got you to believe in the 7. But any continent in the world that it's a true continent starts and ends with the letter A. The only one that sticks out is Europe, which starts and ends with the letter E. Again, I'm gonna save that for a future lesson, but I gotta plant the seed now so you know when it's time to talk about that, we're gonna talk about that. But the waters rose. And now when you get the people, this is why when you look at let me slow it down. When the waters rose and the people moved up, it was the same people. And those people became the Nubians. Those people became the Mayans. Those people became the Incans, the Aztecs. But they all came from the same base. And as they came from the same base, they had the same science, same technology, same methodology of the mind, and same religious practice. They just named it different. Because as they migrated out to their lands, they developed different dialects, different languages. But they still kept the science and the imagery the same. So much so, again, there's pyramids in North America, South America, Central America, and Africa. There's pyramids in the Grand Canyon. There's pyramids in Chicago. Well, I ain't gonna say Chicago, it's Illinois, but whatever. The pyramid in Illinois, Monk's Mound, that's a pyramid, my nigga. That is a fucking pyramid. They don't let you go down into the Grand Canyon because you will see pyramids there as well. You feel what I'm saying? And the pyramids down in the Grand Canyon are a little bit different because it shows you how the pyramids weren't built how they want you to believe that they're built. The pyramids were built from the top down, carved out. Like, people always like, how did they carry all of these bricks? They were so heavy, and why are they still standing? Because they didn't carry the bricks. They built mountains. They chiseled out the land and created the mountains and built it down. Science got to be smarter than the other shit. But as they carved out certain things, a lot of people say there's so many, that's why they want you to believe it's aliens. Because it was too simplistic to actually build a pyramid that way. And then once you carve out the things from the top down, now you carve into the inside to hollow out the standing structure to create everything else. That's why they're called the ninth wonders of the world. And that's why they don't move. And that's why they still stand, because the earth still stands in those areas. The Sphinx wasn't built from the bottom up. It was built from the top down. They chiseled down and spread it out. Same with the pyramids that were built here in Americas. The only difference is they had different dialects as time went on. Because you got to think the Ice Age was about 10,000 BCE, 10,000 years ago or something like that. And as the Ice Age comes off of cosmological winter, and we're walking into cosmological spring, which is the age of Aquarius. And now people say, oh, it's getting woke. Yeah, it is going to get woke, but you still sleep. And I'm going to break it down. This is why the Mayan calendar was so important. This is why the Mayan calendar was so important. The Mayan calendar said the world was going to end 2012. They even changed it to 2021. No. The age of Pisces was going to end in 2012, 2021. Because the 2100 year cycle of that time had happened. Now this is where it's going to get, I'm going to show the connecting piece and why. I'm going to get back into why. And if you aren't understanding that all of this stuff is analysis and deconstruction, I'm showing you masculinity the whole time, and I'm showing you how it's picking apart religious tenets. And this is why it can't not rock hand in hand together. That's why you don't have any masculine men in the church. The preachers aren't masculine. They know what they're doing, and they know that they're going to keep the people ignorant, which violates analysis and deconstruction. But I digress. And I'm going to get back to the council and Nicaea and all of this shit, because it's going to segue, spin the block back into, watch how this shit works. I ain't got to explain shit. Look, when we look at the Mayan calendar, they were big on it. The Mayan calendar predicted that the world was going to end. Niggas thought the world was going to end. No, the age of Pisces was going to end. Right? The Mayan calendar, the circular Mayan calendar, when it's broken down, it looks exactly the same as the Dendera chart and the Dendera calendar in Egypt, which was Kemet. Right? Both of these represent the pantheon of the deities of the stars that sit around them, the zodiac signs. The Mayan calendar and the Dendera chart of Kemet are one and the same. Which means that there is a similar science and they say, did they come from Africa and go over there and teach them the science? Did they come from the Americas and go to Africa? No, it goes back to what I was saying with Atlantis. The information was already there. The people rose and spread out, and their dialects changed, but their sciences didn't. This is why I always talk about imagery. And it goes back into that episode of imagery. Deities don't speak words. They speak images. This is why it remains universal between the Mayans and the Egyptians. And I'm saying Egyptians just because of the conversation sakes of how it's now breaking down. But it's the Kemetic people. The Kemetic people now go back into the Nubians, go back into the Cushites. And then now we tie that back into the migration, because these are the same people. These are ultimately the same people. So now, the Mayan calendar is the same as the Dendera chart, but both of these chronicleize the cosmological spring. Not just the spring, but the cosmological zodiac sign. So much so that in Egypt, in Kemet, there's a place called Nabta Playa, Napta Playa, Nabta Playa, which there is an actual stone monument that documents the 26,000 processional. There has to be one in America too. They haven't revealed where it's at. My guess is that it's either in the Grand Canyon or it's in quote unquote Roswell. And I was always wondering why do they keep associating everything that is us with fucking aliens, bro? Because we cannot allow them to even fathom that they have this mentality and this mental capacity to do certain things that we just cannot do. You feel what I'm saying? But the places in which these things exist are off limits to people. Even off limits to the people that built the fucking structures. But so much so that we're not even going to make them off limits. We're just going to tell them that y'all ain't the people that built these fucking structures. Those people are dead and gone. No, those people got fragmented. Those people got fragmented. Fragmented fucking well, bro. So much so they fragmented us in America the same way they fragmented us in Africa. And people don't see that. The Mayans, the Incans, and the Aztecs and the Omishans were then fragmented into quote unquote the Indian tribes that were here. Nigga, we weren't Indian. India is way on the other side. We weren't Indian, but they fragmented us this way. Yes, we had the individual connections of, okay, we're Iroquois, we're Cherokee, we're Lumbee, we're Chattahoochee, it's different places and different sections within the Americas. But America is literally fragmented the same way the countries in Africa are fragmented. But they completely wiped everything off on that. Because it's like, if we don't do this and we talk about, the Trail of Tears, we pushed them all west. And if you pushed everybody west, then what happened to the people that were here? So they teach you that when you pushed everybody west with the Trail of Tears, you get erased with the $5 Indian. The $5 Indian now gives you a different picture of what the quote unquote Native American was. But if you understood the actual position in history and shit, like, something was wrong. Something was really wrong. And the people that actually moved west, that got moved west, a lot of them became cowboys. The whole cowboy and Indian thing, that was something that was very interesting to me when I learned about it. Bass Reeves being the greatest, the baddest cowboy, those were some of the people that said, no, we're not going for this. Those were a lot of the masculine men that got pushed out. They said, we're not about to do this shit. You're not breaking us. But they had to go west, and as they went west, they had to use weapons, but they couldn't use weapons on everybody. Oh, they used bows and arrows. Nigga, no, some of them motherfuckers were strapped. They got y'all guns too. But they got you believing that the idea of a cowboy is a white man fighting the Indian. That's not the case, because now you're looking at how the migration happened. The infiltration happened from the $5 Indians and things of that nature, the mixing and stuff. A lot of the indigenous people were very dark. Big noses, wavy hair. There's people right now that think that because I got good hair, I got wavy hair, I got Indian in my family. No, nigga, you're the Indian in your family. But again, masculinity has to step in, because when you analyze and deconstruct all of this shit, everything else that starts to fall, it starts to fall. And a lot of people can't deal with that truth when it comes. You feel me? And the reason why I use the Dendera chart, the reason why I use the Dendera chart, and I use the Mayan calendar, and I said I was going to spin it back to the Romans, was because when you understand the religion, when you understand Christianity for real, you realize that Christianity is established, the actual book itself, Christianity and Islam. The reason why the Islam, and I think I talked about it. I know I talked about this in So Frail 3, but I think I have an episode about this. Christianity is about the sun. Islam is about the moon. Right? It's definitely in So Frail 3. Jesus and his 12 disciples represents the zodiac signs. Muhammad and his 10 companions represent the celestial bodies. Muhammad represents the moon. The celestial bodies are the other planets that sit out there. The 12 zodiac signs, Jesus and his 12 disciples or whatever, plays all of that in. But the reason why I'm talking about that with astrology, because the Council of Nicaea knew that, one, we're going to have to make a calendar to shift everything. But two, we can't fuck up the astrological signs. We cannot fuck up nature. We can't fuck up the actual times in which nature operates. We still have to be on that. You feel what I'm saying? Christianity at that time established the mark of the start of the Piscean age. So when you look at the different testaments of the Bible, and this is one of the reasons why they tell you that the Old Testament is out, we're not under that anymore, but they can't tell you why. And this is why there's a lot of confusion within the church, within that communication of the church, because they'll say, oh no, paying tithes is Old Testament, or doing this is Old Testament. Why are we still doing it? Blah, 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 blah. But they don't understand what the Old Testament was. The Old Testament was the age of Aries. The New Testament was the age of Pisces. Hey, bro, for real though, at some point, we got to stop talking to women about masculinity and start talking to each other about it. And I mean really talk to each other. Not as enablers and co-signers, but as men trying to reach the pinnacle of our essence. And that's what the So Frail series does. So Frail 1 is the definition. So Frail 2 is the acknowledgement. And So Frail 3 is the resolution. If you rock with the So Frail conversations, I can guarantee you will rock with the So Frail series of books. So visit IamJustSeeing.com right now so you can add the series to your library. I promise you will never look at masculinity the same again, and you're going to stop wasting your time arguing with women about it. This is a conversation that men need to have between men, and it's time we start having this conversation now. Again, mythology that was supposed to teach you ritual, that was supposed to give you allegory to understand what you're dealing with when it relates to the stars. The Council of Nicaea understood this. They understood this well, but we're going to layer it so that the people don't know that this is about referencing the stars. You feel what I'm saying? But we can't lie to them. So we just have to give it to them in a way that they don't know that we're lying to them, but assuming we're telling the truth. The title of the book is the Holy Bible. Holy comes from the Greek, and it means helios. Helios means the sun. If the Greeks got that information from the Hebrews, why were the Hebrews referring to this book as the book of the sun? Because Biblio, Bible, that means Biblios, that means books. I ain't even need to break that down, but this is the book of the sun. Why is the symbolism of the Quran the star and the crescent? The star and the crescent moon. Why would you need to put a star and a crescent moon if you're not talking about stars and crescent moons? Because that's the information that you take from the people. But we're going to stick to Christianity because that is the one that affects us the most. They all affect us in a way because we leave Christianity and say, you know what, I'm going to convert to Islam. Okay, nigga, now you're going to go pray 5 times a day and the sun has 5 different positions in the day and you pray all 5 of those positions. Don't even know that that's what you're praying to. Think you're praying to Allah? Yeah, okay. 5 times a day, my ass. And you got to pray to the east. Why? Because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. How else would you know? If you didn't have a compass, if you didn't have a direction, how do you know where the east is? Oh, somebody got to tell you. No, all you got to do is go outside, see where the sun is rising. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west. And you get your location from that perspective. You feel what I'm saying? But again, analysis and deconstruction steps into this motherfucker and it breaks shit down and it leaves what's left. And it's like, there is no room for belief when you understand something, but you have to go through the process of analysis and deconstruction to get there. So analysis and deconstruction are always going to conflict with religion, which therefore means masculinity is always going to be in conflict with religion. So when we now look at how the Council of Nicaea came in, they understood the allegorical perspective of this shit. They knew that the story of Jesus or Yahshua, however you want to look at it, was about the Piscean age. It was about the Piscean age and it was going to last for 2,000 years. That's why the 0 BC time starts with him. Because we still need that 2,000 year time pocket. Because the celestial zodiac sign, the cosmological sign that is listed within Noptoplaya, that is listed within the Mayan calendar, that was listed within the Dendera charts, that is merged between different cultures that are still black and Africoid, that has been spaced out across the world, they still tell the same story. What was going to end was the age of the Pisces. Jesus represents the age of a Pisces. You don't believe me? Go look at your nearest car that has a Jesus placard on it with Jesus' name in the middle. What is the name in? A fucking fish. They can't lie to you, but they just can't tell you what the truth is. One thing that I learned about this esoteric shit, one thing that I learned about a lot of this shit, the occult, whatever you want to call it, these people don't lie. We may think that they're manipulative, whatever. They don't lie. They may package it in a language you don't understand. They may give you a language that you can't understand and tell you the words directly to your face. But they will not lie to you because they can't. Because they do not, I don't care how fucked up you think that the world is going right now, they do not violate universal law and they do not take away person's free will. Whether you can understand this shit or not, they do not take away your free will to have the capacity to understand it. But how do you have the capacity to understand it? By using your masculine energy. Analysis and deconstruction. So again, Jesus marked the age of Pisces. And again, it's like, well, how do you know that? You can't just say that just because they put Jesus in the fish, the vesica pieces or whatever the case may be. No, Jesus tells you, I'm a fisher of men. The theme that Jesus came to deliver was belief and love. Study astrology and learn the theme of a Pisces. It's belief and love or strong emotions. An actual Pisces believes, I ain't gonna say to believe everything or they gullible and shit. That's not the case. But the theme of, but to believe something means to have trust in it. Pisces are very trusting people. Trusting almost to a fault. But they're tied with emotion behind it. Which makes sense how religion will be segued in during that era. Which now goes back into what the Old Testament and the New Testament is. The Old Testament was the age of Aries. This is why in the Old Testament, what do you have? Fire, lots of fire, shit burning down, but you have a lot of war. Why is there so much war? Okay, the age of Aries is over. Now we're going into the Pisces age. Now we just love. Love and belief. It's not much fighting in the New Testament. It ain't much fighting in the New Testament. And it's done like that for a reason. So now when the Romans killed Jesus, in the Bible, it says the Romans killed Jesus. That was their way of rewriting themselves out of history. Even though the Bible does not really speak, it's not really a historical doctrine. But it's historical fiction because it uses certain events to make it fit within history and it doesn't fit within history. You don't believe me? David, Solomon, Elijah, all of the so-called great people of the Bible were buried in the tombs of their forefathers. Where are these tombs? They find Egyptians left and right. They find a sarcophagi left and right. You mean to tell me you can't find none of the people that was in this religious book? Why? I've heard one person say, and this was when I knew this was a black man that said it to me. This is when I knew that it really affects masculinity for real. He said, that's because the Most High has concealed it so nobody can find it. Nigga, in a world where motherfuckers need proof of this motherfucker, you would think he would make it the easiest to find. But it makes sense easy. Also, too, why there's so much beef between Egypt and Christianity. Like God was beefing with the Pharaoh. But now, studying the Old Testament, studying Pharaoh, they never tell you what the Pharaoh's name is. When you're believing these stories, when you're coming from a space of femininity, it's you just believe it. You feel me? You believe it. You don't really dissect the information. But when you actually analyze and deconstruct the shit, you say, there's no name for the Pharaoh. Well, where does this shit fit in history? Now do you see religion and masculinity do not go together. But masculinity is defined as a spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. So as they're writing this and they're creating this and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to the world. Because if we have them all under this religion, this is the cult. We can make them believe in what they can't see. We can make them believe in what they can't see easily. But we have to write it in such a way that they don't know what they're seeing. This is why the language goes. This is why the actual context has to go from Hebrew, Greek, to Latin, to English, to French, to Spanish, to all of these different languages and translations. We're not going to tell you to go back to the Hebrew and get to the allegorical perspective of what this was. There's buffers and layers that you got to get to before you can see that. You feel what I'm saying? So the Council of Nicaea knew that this was the age of Pisces coming into it. They knew astrologically this is what it was. They made themselves vanish and disappear. That was one of the dopest pieces that tied into something that was done during the age of belief. To believe that this motherfucker doesn't exist anymore. Because again, as I said, any culture whose empire fell, their religion went with them. How did the Roman Catholic Church get stronger when the Roman Empire fell? That makes no sense. That makes no sense at all. But again, we're not going to get into that. Too heavy today. But as the empire began to expand, it began to hide and began to collapse. They started to create, when the Pope started to come into the place, now we move into Spain. Now we move into the colonization. Because now you have the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages was how it worked. You start killing off people. You start making them take this religion on. The first experiment was with their own people. They are sick, sinister people. But they did it with their own people. And in doing it with their own people, what ended up happening was one of the people that actually started introducing torture to take on a religion was Pope Innocent. Ain't that ironic? The nigga name was Pope Innocent. And he was the nigga that was torturing people. How is the innocent Pope innocent? Like when you innocent, you're innocent. But it's the innocent Pope that is actually torturing people and then taking on Christianity. He started the shit. He was the first one. Now, this practice now goes out to the other places. So now when you're leveraging the religious text that says, when you go to a new land, you can put to the sword all men, women, children, and cattle. That means you can slaughter everybody. But you put to the sword all men, women, children, and cattle. But it was something deeper than that. Because now Alexander the Great was one of the last, quote unquote, Roman people to conquer and everything. If you study Alexander the Great, his entire platoon, a military campaign, were homosexuals. That's what made their battle so strong. That's what made their unit so strong. They went to war with their lovers. Oh, I'm bringing my lover home. I'm bringing my lover home. But then again, this is a part of that culture. This is a part of that culture. And why the Romans are built off that, pedophilia, all of that shit, that's their culture. And they spread that within the world through the use of Christianity. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that was their goal. We want to make sure everybody follows and believes in Christianity because now we're going to control the world with that. Islam is still going to stand because you still got the choice. They're not going to take away the choice from you, but all of this shit derives from the same thing. These are called Abrahamic religions. The only difference between the Quran and the Bible, only difference between Christianity and Islam is Isaac and Ishmael. Two brothers, nigga. That's where the books diverge. That's where the paths diverge. Basically, Isaac is the main character of Christianity and Ishmael is the main character of Islam. In their mythology. And the derivations happen at that point, but they're the same fucking books derived from Abrahamic religion. So again, analysis and deconstruction, you can start from whatever religion you want to, but you're going to go back and find the point where they reunite. And they reunite as the point of being brothers, which means that the offshoots of what have you come off of them as cousins, which now alludes deeper into the sun and the moon. Being the polarizing aspects naturally, when you think about the separation between the stars, you have day and night, sun and the moon. The sun governs the daytime. The moon governs the nighttime. The sole fact that they made sure nobody understood this information was how it worked so well. So when the Christians approached Shaka Zulu and said, "You're going to burn in hell," where I'm from, we eat fire. That is a masculine response because I'm willing to understand and use my logic and analysis and deconstruction to realize that this can't be used to bind me. But now when the colonialism and the Spanish and the conquistadors and everybody come up, why do you think missionary sex is called missionary sex? Because it was the sex of the missionaries, which is ultimately rape. If you study sex from the perspective of tantras, sutras, and just the spirituality connection with sex, man is never on top of woman. Even the Bible itself begins with Adam having to be put to sleep so Eve can be made, because they removed the story of Lilith where she said, Adam is not getting on top of me. And she gets punished and labeled as the queen of the demons or the mother of the demons or some shit like that, because she will not submit to this man. Now, when I tell you motherfuckers that women ain't supposed to be submissive, y'all look at me like I'm crazy. The religion made y'all like this. The religion made women like this. But what did it do to men? Because now when you have Adam in this motherfucker who can't analyze and deconstruct, how does your lady speak to a snake, my nigga? Even still, even when you analyze and deconstruct, niggas don't believe logic. Adam and Eve were quote unquote the first two people. I know I am well aware that Lilith, Adam's first wife, was Lilith. I'm well aware of that. I'm well aware of it being an allegory, mythology, whatever. I have to stick to how motherfuckers understand this shit. When you tell me that Adam and Eve were the only two people here, and there's both of their kids were sons, how did Cain kill Abel and then go off and find a wife? Analysis and deconstruction. Religion doesn't stand to masculinity. I don't be bullshitting when I say this shit. You feel what I'm saying? Where does it, like, how did he find a wife? Well, we don't know if Adam had, this is what I always get. We don't know if Adam had other kids. Yes, we do, nigga. That's the whole premise of the story. Him and Eve were the first two motherfuckers. There should not have been any other kids. You don't even make it out of Genesis before the shit starts looking crazy. You feel what I'm saying? You don't even make it out of Genesis before the shit starts looking crazy, because it's not supposed to look normal, because it's mythology. Mythology was never supposed to look normal, because it's designed to tell you a story, and it's designed to teach you something in an allegorical way. This is why by the time you get to Revelations and you start to see what an actual angel is, it has 6 wings and 3 of them, and each wings has to cover its body, it has multiple eyes and shit. And when you look at when the shit actually, the trumpet blows and all of the fight's gonna happen, a Leviathan has to come out of a cage. You don't even know what the fuck a Leviathan is. How the fuck you gonna see it if it happens? It's mythology. It's no different than a Greek epic. But again, because Greek culture collapsed, Greek religion was no longer deemed religion, it was deemed mythology. Oh, the gods, the multiple gods, Poseidon, all of them ain't real. They never told you those things were real. But the story is interpreted in that way. Because when you understand what a god was from their perspective and how they learned it, a god is the highest conceptualization of the mind. So when I say this god operating here, I understand the highest conceptualization of the mind, and I make sure to always give them a man and a woman, because they're opposing opposites of masculine and feminine energy. The Greeks were the last ones to give deities wives. Allah and God ain't got wives. Now, as rumor has it, if you actually study Allah as a woman, niggas ain't gonna like that. But I don't remember which verse it was, but there's a verse that says Allah has a womb. That's different. So if Allah is a man and he got a womb, he's a hermaphrodite, which kind of is what the Baphomet is. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't want you to feel like your shit's demonic or whatever the case may be, but it's something that you got to understand. Again, analysis and deconstruction, if I invoke the fear, you're not going to look at it. When people look at the Baphomet, they automatically assume that it's demonic and evil, but a Baphomet is the balance between the animal world, the animal world, the human world, the masculine and the feminine. And if you actually look at the 2 arms, one pointing up, one pointing down, one says solve, one says coagulate. One says solve and one says coagula. Coagula is synthesis and construction. It's bringing something together. Solve is to analyze and deconstruct, but they're Latin words. But because they're Latin words and you don't know Latin, you're going to look at it as, that's magic. That's some demonic shit. You know what else is some demonic shit? Pharmacology. The word pharmacology, pharmacy, pharmacist, it derives from the word pharmakeus, which is Latin, that means sorcery. So that means your pharmacist is a sorcerer. That means your pharmacology is the study of sorcery. Those pills that you keep taking, you're taking in somebody else's magic. But you only want to focus on what they told you to focus on is demonic and not focus on whatever it is. That's why this wordplay shit is so fucking funny. They don't lie to you, but they don't tell you the truth when they're telling you the truth. But how will you know? This is why they put synthesis and construction, they tie religion to femininity. Religion isn't tied to masculinity. It can't be tied to masculinity. It has to be tied to femininity because it now has to synthesize and construct what has not been or will not be analyzed and deconstructed, and that's when you get belief. That's when you get belief. So now when we go from the Council of Nicaea, they set this tone. Now when we go to the colonialism, when they come to the Americas, they come in the name of Christianity. They come in the name of Christianity, but then they flip it because now they're like, well, where did the Romans go? They turned red, white, and blue. They turned red, white, and blue. Became, Great Britain, Spanish, French, all of these things. They turned red, white, and blue, and they began to colonize. When they came to these lands, when they saw the Negro, because that's what they called it, the Negro. We look at Negro as black because that's what they called black. That's what they now define as the color black. We are never black. Our skin isn't black. Our skin is brown. From the lightest brown, even the darkest skin of people, their skin is dark brown. So much so that you can literally see a differentiation between your hair, which is black, and your skin. So now it makes you wonder, how did you get this? Now, when we understand, if you even paying attention to it, when you understand how they identify Caucasian people, it's by hair. Blondes, brunettes, redheads. Black people were never identified by their skin, but their hair, my nigga. It was their hair. When they seen the Negro, it was because the Negro had black hair. I'm going to get into that. The skin was darker brown, but the hair was black. Even if you look at it from the Spanish perspective, the Boricuas, the Morenas, that was darker hair. It always related back to the hair, but somehow we got it tied to the skin. When and how? It became associated to the skin when the English tried to follow what the Spanish were doing. The Spanish conquistadors were horrible. This is the reason why today's time you have motherfuckers, me no black, I know black, nigga, you black, nigga, you. Dominicans and fucking Haitians are on the same landmass. One of y'all just got raped a little bit more than the other. The Dominicans and the Cubans and shit like that, they don't want to acknowledge that they can't. Y'all just got raped a little bit more, a little bit longer. Y'all succumbed to the mixing. Because the Spanish conquistadors may have done it a little bit different. But the French that hit the Jamaicans, that hit the Jamaicans, the Haitians and shit like that, they didn't get far. They didn't get that far. That's why the skin remained darker. And then the English came last following these motherfuckers and said, the negras. From the Spanish perspective in the Spanish language, when you have negra, you know that as a feminine, but that is a feminine woman, that's a feminine with black hair. It's always been about the hair. We always wonder why is hair so motherfucking important, because again, I can't lie to you, but I can't tell you the motherfucking truth. I can't tell you that the reason why we call you black is because of your hair, but I'm gonna make you believe it's your skin, because now the most ignorant motherfucker that come into this motherfucker, why are you calling these negras? The Negro and the negra was the black hair, black man and black woman, masculine and feminine perspective. Every people in nature, every people in language have always acknowledged the man and the woman as separate entities. The masculine and feminine as separate entities, except the English person. But that's something totally different. So now, when they now come in and they adopt the slavery tactics from the Spanish. If you adopt the slavery tactics from the Spanish, you're going to adopt the words, the languages. So as the English hear the Spanish speaking about the black people, which is the darker brown people, as negras, it's the black hair. It's not the black skin, it's the black hair. That's why our hair is so important to us and we don't know it. It's so genetically wired into us to be important to us and we don't know that's why. Make sure they don't understand their hair, because their hair now serves as a conduit to the universe. The hair serves as a conduit to the universe. Black people have what's considered nine ether hair. Everybody else has what's considered 6 ether hair. The curly, coily, kingy, the more it is, the more it winds up towards the sun. It looks like a tree. It looks like tree leaves, bushes and shit like that. It stands up and goes towards the sun. But the hair that goes away from the sun is 6 ether. The follicles are built different and everything. That's mainly the Caucasoid hair. But something that has always been used was to identify people by their hair. But now when we say, why are we called black? We're called black because now, I'm going to get into the Black's Law Dictionary and how they rewrote the shit. But when they started to identify us, that's when the Negro came in. That's where the Negro came in. Now, the Negro started because first it was negras, but then the white people, country from the South, they couldn't. But see, the Southern people were once British people who developed, whose accent changed as they spent more time away from the land. You know, the colonialisms from Virginia Dares and all of these motherfuckers, the lost colony and shit, when they came back and shit got faded. But that's not here nor there. When they were trying to say negra in Spanish, it had that Southern twang to it, and it turned to negras, the negras, which evolved into nigger. This is why the hair is so hated. Because we know, and we know, but we don't know the true history of what it is. It's not the skin that makes them call you a nigger, it's your hair. Because now when we go to how to convert a Negro into a Christian, why were we called Negroes? And we thinking it's the Negro because of the skin. No, it's the black hair. It's the black hair. But again, analysis and deconstruction would have broke this shit down a long time ago and been able to actually study it and see it. So when people say, I'm not black, don't call me black, don't call me. Yes, you are. Because it's about your hair. But now when you get in the Black's Law Dictionary and it says black means that this doesn't have life, or it's a civilis mortis or some shit like that. I know I talk a lot of crazy shit, and y'all be thinking I don't be knowing what I be talking about. I know a lot of shit. Analysis and deconstruction, motherfucker. But civil mortis is a dead body. It's civilly dead. But if you understand Black's Law, if you understand anything that is tied to law, everything that is in law, even in medicine, is tied to the Latin language. Why? Because I don't want you to know what the fuck we're talking about while knowing what we're talking about. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just not going to tell you the truth. The way in which you can understand it. You feel me? I'm just not going to tell you the truth in the way in which you can understand it. But if you figure it out, I'm not going to be mad at you. But now you have to do something with it. So now when you're able to convert people into Christian, now fast forward. I know it seems like I'm jumping around, but this is a timeline and it works well. Because time no longer exists for me. I can't explain that this episode, but I'll explain it in another season. But now when we look at converting Negroes to Christians, and now when we fast forward to most recent years, you know, we're not Negroes, we're Hebrews. Hebrews to Negroes. There was a whole documentary on that shit, turning the Hebrews and Negroes. How did you really turn a Hebrew into a Negro? Because now you have to understand Hebrews were magicians. Hebrews were magicians. You like how I brought that shit back in, didn't you? Hebrews were magicians, and that's how they ended up giving the information the way that they gave it. Abracadabra, that is a Hebrew word that means I think, what I think I create. The 22 letters of the alphabet translate and are used within the major arcana of the tarot and the esoteric shit. They're used in numerology. So the Hebrews were magical people. Again, they were trained in the ways of the Egyptians as way of Moses. You feel what I'm saying? As way of Moses. But again, that was written according to erasure of the people that they knew that they wanted to erase. Because now we're going to turn you from a Hebrew, a magician, into a Negro, a person with black hair who hates themselves. When we look at Motown era, when we look at, well, really starting with Motown era, the era before the 70s and shit like that, and it's like, why do you think it was so important for them to have finger waves, conks, Malcolm X and all, like the Malcolm X era, when he was talking about it. Yeah, he used to wear the conk, rock the straight hair and shit like that. The mixing was about fucking up the hair. Because there's a powerful connection within the hair. A very powerful connection within hair, because it shows and it stimulates how well you are wired into your own humanity. And what I mean by that, for the motherfuckers that don't get it, is that our hair was so potent And because it's nine ether and it grows up towards the sun, it now serves as a conduit that absorbs everything. This is why it's black. Our hair absorbs all of the nutrients and the things that we need from the earth. Our skin processes it, but our hair is the first conduit to it. Heat damage? How the fucking heat damage black hair? Now they've done something to our hair to where it doesn't move right. But what I was saying with that was like, when you start to look at coming out of slavery, becoming free or whatever the case may be, the way in which we didn't take care of our hair anymore. So much so the way in which we chemicalized our hair, and we didn't want our hair to. Why was the hair always so important? Because the hair has always been the stable point to identify that you was a nigga. And why were you a nigga? Because you was a nigga based off of the fact that negro and negra always represented man or woman with black hair. Black hair and brown skin. That's where the distinction came in, because the moreno is the black hair, but not the blacker skin. That's why you had the Boricua morenas. You feel me? Or morenos. Moreno is also black hair. You feel me? If I'm not mistaken, I want to say that's actually black hair, because Blanco is blonde. Moreno is black, but it's black with white skin. So those are the black hair people, you know, but to have black hair and black skin is where you got negras from. Because it always related to the hair, but then it came into the skin too, and now the two things go together. This is why our hair has always been a problem. But now when we go into it deeper, tying it back into the enslavement and how Christianity worked, this is why, as black people, it's always been the women who've had the biggest issue with the hair. Not the men. It's been the women, because the women were the target. The negras were the targets. Because now, if I can make sure the Negro doesn't replicate, in a sense that when the boy is, analysis and deconstruction ain't there, but I got to affect the negra for that. I got to affect the negra for that. This is why the mammy, the big mama, that's why that had been infused for so long. I want to make sure that I'm constantly selling the men off before there's any connection, before any form of masculinity can be tied to these boys. Because now he has to be tied into what his mother is. This is why I always say there's three types of men. In today's society, we don't even realize it. And this is going to come off very, very fucked up, but I don't care, because I can fight. And this is the reality of what it is. There's three types of men. There's heterosexual men. There's homosexual men who like vagina, and homosexual men who don't. The men that they feel safe with are homosexual men who like vagina and homosexual men who don't. They don't like the heterosexual man because that man leads with masculinity. Masculinity is a spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. The homosexual man who likes vagina and the homosexual man who doesn't leads with femininity, the spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of synthesis and construction. And because they are men, they switch it to the toxic side. Fast forward today and tell me that you don't see the world exactly as I just painted it out from the history in which it started. The masculine man is the problem. But the masculine man will always die as long as religion is playing. When you look at most religious men, look at the religious men that play in the choir, the religious men that sing in the choir, what do they always say about them? Okay. They're the ones who don't like the vagina, but the ones who do, they become the pastors, the deacons, or whatever. What do? They were also the breeders. They're also the ones that have a first, second, and third lady. They're also the ones that's also slanging dick and doing. They have no discipline. They have no spiritual control. They need some kind of medium in order to get them right. True masculinity is analysis and deconstruction. You can literally break down what's right and wrong in your life and what's wrong. And you don't need an intercessor to tell you something's wrong. But again, now this ties back in, because now it goes, how did you get here and I didn't forget about patriarchy. This is how patriarchy plays out. This is why in the religious area, there are no fathers, because everybody's father is a spiritual deity. I don't think you understand the psychology behind that shit. Because now even when we break down the etymology of psychology, look at the word psych, it goes back to the Latin, it means spirit. But when we look at the men, they all have a father without ever having a father. Their father is not a physical being that teaches them masculinity. It is a jealous, vengeful, and wrathful deity. It is a deity that does not like women. It is a deity that does not have a woman on his side. It is a deity that does not accept or respect femininity. It is a deity that contradicts his words. It is a deity that intentionally puts people in fucked up situations just to prove a point. You don't think the religious man follows that same tenet? But again, that becomes the father. But he still has a father that he has to answer to. There's no masculinity in it. I can't analyze and deconstruct my own world because I'm praying and asking something to solve this problem for me. That's the game. That's the game. And now everybody is now under me, and I am not a father, but I am the father of these people. What do you think people call why do you think people call their pastors fathers? Because I have to make sure that who is serving as the father of the people is not really the father. Because now you have a man that I said this in a speaking engagement I was in. As a man, you have to ask a man for permission before you can get anything done, right? Now, we have our mothers, right? We have our mothers. In a religion, you have the mother. And there's nobody above the mother but, quote unquote, the father. The father is the head. But now, how many entities do you have above a father? Let's keep it on a basic level. Start with a boy. The boy has, quote unquote, starting with a boy, and he has a sibling. That's a brother. Start with a boy. Over him, he has his brother. Over the brother, there is the actual biological father. Over the biological father, you have, deacon. Over deacon, you have pastor, bishop, or whatever the case may be. Even in Islam, you have the imam. You have somebody above them. And then, of course, you have Prophet Muhammad in Islam. Then you have Jesus in the Christianity. Then you have God, and then you have Allah. There's levels of fathers before these people. That's what patriarchy was always about. Taking the essential essence of a father, masculinity, analysis, and deconstruction away from the man and showing him that essence is outside of himself, while still showing the woman, and by still making sure that the woman knows that she now has to raise the boys and make sure the boys don't accept the father within themselves, which is masculinity. Now, when you understand what I was talking about in So Frail 3 and So Frail 2, I want to say it was So Frail 3 only, but it might have been in So Frail 2, when I talk about fraternal, spousal, and paternal energy. They stripped your paternal energy away from you as men, which is why we cannot collaborate with women on that level. It's gone. This is why we end up in our relationships now where, look at today. What are the women? Why do you want a woman with a that can tell people off, the feisty attitudes, and you a quiet dude? Because somebody got to tell the waiter off when they mess up my order. Why can't you say what you want to say about your order? Now, when you do stand up and you do learn how to assert yourself in that regard, it's always, now this is toxic. This is toxic. This is toxic masculinity. Why? Why? It's by design. And what is the root in all of this shit? Religion. That's the forefront, the backbone of all of this. Because now, with the patriarchy, there has to be a man above me. There's no woman above woman. Think about that. They removed the woman from this shit for a reason. Because now women no longer have a deified intercessor or a deified connection that they once had. Especially those that are negras and negros. We don't have our Shuns anymore. We don't have our Yemiyas anymore. We don't have our Olokuns. We don't have our Shangos. We don't have our Oguns. We don't have these anymore. We have God and Allah. That hits different when you understand how this was imposed upon you. So when people ask, when are we ever going to be free? When are we going to we're not. As long as y'all continue to follow one of these two religions, I'm not saying give it up. I'm saying use your masculine essence to analyze and deconstruct this motherfucker and learn to make a right decision. That decision may be for you to stay into it. For me, it wasn't. Because now I understand when you truly analyze and deconstruct some shit, belief no longer matters to you. Belief no longer counts. When this shit violates my reality, it's not real. I can't use it when it violates my reality. You feel what I'm saying? Now, when we look at music, they say rap music is bad. Rap music is about violence. Rap and hip hop is about violence. R&B is about sex. And gospel music is about God. Out of these three, they push all of them. How is this in good company? So now when you look at most religious men, look at the templates that you have. I'm not shitting on these people. They're phenomenal music makers. But when you look at the Kirk Franklins, when you look at the Ty Tribbett's, when you look at the Israel Holtons, when you look at these people, yeah, see, I told y'all, nigga, I know. Look at their demeanors. They're men. They're religious men. But are they masculine men? And you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. I catch flack with my family and shit because I keep pointing out the men ain't masculine. And this is what I've been trying to show y'all. Y'all don't want to look at it the way that it's supposed to be seen, because now it changes your reality. Because now when the men step up and masculinity emerges and you now analyze and deconstruct it, the religion falls. We be looking at our ancestors and shit. And this is one of the only things that I fucks with Kendrick Lamar heavy. But this is one, and I don't know, maybe he may be luring people in so he can say the right shit that he's saying, because he's a very deep person. But the whole Hebrew Israelite thing that he's been claiming and shit, I don't know if he was luring people in or whatever. But it's like one of those things is like, are you using that to sedate the people? And I'm only asking that because it's like, we're not Hebrew Israelites. And I'm going to show you, because if you actually analyze and deconstruct the religion, and you actually analyze and deconstruct history and the land and stuff, we cannot be indigenous and Hebrew at the same time. Which now allows for whatever it is that we are, it nullifies what the Bible was once given to us for. Because if we are indigenous, then we weren't shipped over here by ships and slavery. That means that prophecy or whatever it was that they try to give us, that was what cursed us for not listening. Nigga, we was cursed for 400 years for not listening. But we were shipped off into slavery from slaves and we was here. But when you actually study the history and you know that we were here already, that nullifies everything in that book. That nullifies everything in that book. But they need that book to make sure that we remain in the space that we remain, because as long as we want reparations for being the chosen people, as long as we still think that the sky is going to crack and something is going to come save us, we won't want revenge. They use that to guarantee that we do not seek revenge for what they've done to us. Truly masculine men scare society. The true black men who analyze and deconstruct the world scare society, but it's not until they're dead, and it's not until we're dead and gone and we're no longer here and we have left everything that everybody wants to say, I was always on that side. You weren't. You weren't. We respect Huey Newton and Bobby Seale for what they did. Those were masculine men. But while they were here, their peers called them crazy. Their peers didn't want them to be a certain way. Their peers wanted them to shut the fuck up. Yes, you had people that got down with the Panthers, but you had people that didn't fuck with the Panthers until after the Panthers got dismantled. You feel me? You got people that want to use Malcolm X's name all after the fact. They didn't have a good thing to say about him when he was actually in these streets, when he was actually in the field doing the work. You feel what I'm saying? They don't respect the true masculinity because it's changing. It makes shit shake. It's like you can't go back to that old way of thought. You can't go back to that old way of thinking. You have to analyze and deconstruct some shit. But now, I said that, and I kind of got off from one of the points that I was going to make that just made me circle back here. This is one of the reasons why, when it came to hair, by the 70s, our energy changed. Tying it back in the Panther movement and all of that stuff like that, most of the people had natural hair. They literally, it's not many years ago when they just made legislation that you can wear black women can wear their natural hair a certain way at work now. You can wear your hair how you want to at work. Because your hair, why was your hair such a problem? Why do they always feel the need to touch your hair? That's why you're black. That's where the nigger came from. Nigger hair. Nigger, like, this is where it came from because it denoted the hair. Nigger derives from negradas. Negradas derives from the word black in Spanish, and it meant the hair. That's how they identified the people, not by the skin. So now when they say race is a social construct, it's not. Race is still a construct based off of genetics. It's still a construct based off of genetics. And the hair is that much more important to identify the people. Because we're the only people who actually have hair. We're the only people who actually have hair. This is why it's always been don't shave the head, because we're the only ones with hair. Everybody else has fur. 6 ether hair is fur. Nigga. Now it gets fucked up. Because now when you're like, oh, if 6 ether hair is fur, that means motherfuckers with fur. Yes, they're animals. Only animals have hair, have fur. Humans have hair. Hair gravitates towards the sun. You feel me? And it also extends out of melanated skin. Hair extends out of eumelanated skin. Fur extends out of pheomelanin skin. When you actually study melanin, you know that there's a difference between eumelanin and pheomelanin. Again, studying medicine, studying Latin, you know the prefix eu means true. The prefix pheo means false. Caucasian skin is pheomelanated skin. Do you dig what I'm saying? Animal skin beneath their fur is pheomelanated skin. Pheomelanated skin is sulfur based. Sorry, it's sulfur based. You feel me? That's why when they get wet, they smell like dogs. It's just what it is. You feel what I'm saying? Eumelanated skin is selenium based. It's different. And from the selenium based skin, you get hair. From sulfur based skin, you get fur. Which is even crazier because now when you look at occult shit and demonic shit, the devil is associated with sulfur. I'm not going to get into that. But I am going to get into that because now when you look at the God of your enemy is your devil. And when your enemy gave you your God, what do you think you're worshiping? But if masculinity was prevalent, it would be allowed to analyze and deconstruct this very religion to know that we're serving the God of our enemy. And we don't realize that shit. We don't even want to break down the science to get behind it. We just want to believe. The men cannot believe because the women now have to take control of this shit. There are no masculine men anymore. As I always tell y'all, and I said this in the masculine spirituality episode, like in 2 seasons ago. Black men don't believe in this religion. Black men don't fuck with this religion. Black men know this religion is fucked up, but we follow the religion that we either come from the womb that we come from, the womb that we're going into. That's been the conditioning for the longest. That's why they take out the masculine spiritual component, because it has to lead with masculinity, which is analysis and deconstruction. The women synthesize and construct. When they look at the witch doctors and how it was the woman the man broke down the chemical components and elements of it, and the woman reconstituted the medicines. They don't want to tell you the collaboration between that. They stripped that and broke that for 400 years, and the cornerstone has always been religion. And don't forget to check out Polycafe Clothing, formerly Just Scenes merch. Get all of your intricate designs crafted specifically for the melanated being to develop a positive imagery within self and to have a little bit of fun in the process. From the peace, love, knowledge, and freedom to the dead horses and water designs, all of the styles are crafted for the imagery to make you feel as you're supposed to feel. Because as I always say, the best way to fit in is to stand out. And what better way to stand out than with your exclusive styles from Polycafe Clothing. All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Yeah. See, This is why I'm like, yo, don't bring me to your conversations about masculinity, because this is what we have to put on the forefront. But if you want to bring me to if you're willing to have this openness about masculinity and why it relates to religion, cool, by all means have me. But don't have me if you're not willing to talk about this. Because I'm far beyond that bullshit y'all talking about holding doors open and courting and shit like that. Fuck that. I'm trying to heal my people, and the only way that we can get free is if we let this religion go. Any religion. And not just letting it go. Understand why it was given to you in the first fucking place. Understand how it was given to you in the first fucking place and what it was meant to do to you. Nobody wants to talk about that part. Because nobody can see that that's what happened. When they conquered and they colonized and shit, the Council and Nicaea did what they did so that way religion can be, nigga, that's how we keep these cults alive. We're going to make sure everybody believe in the same deity. We're going to make sure everybody think they following the same shit. And we're going to make sure everybody believe this shit is real. And we're not going to teach them what's real about this shit. We're going to keep them basic at the basic level. We're going to give them a few rituals to make them feel good, but keep them at the basic level. Black people, if we actually studied our true history, we would know that there was never, ever, ever any history of cannibalism in our reality. In any way, shape, or form. We did not eat people. So how is the number one ritual of Christianity eating of the flesh and drinking of the blood? Symbolically, of course. We're not really eating. We're eating crackers or whatever. How do you create and conceptualize a symbolic ritual where you're eating blood and you're eating flesh and drinking blood of a person? And that has never been in your culture, but it's been in the necromantic culture of who? The fucking Romans. We think the Romans just disappeared. No, these niggas rebranded as the Roman Catholic Church and they put religion everywhere. And they made it look like they fell. We ain't fall, nigga. They ain't fall at all, homie. They rebranded themselves and they spread across the world, and they knew what we're going to have to do. If we want to keep this intact, we're going to have to control the black people. We're going to have to control the black haired people whose hair stands up on their head. We've already seen that they were here when we went to the Africas with the Greeks and everything. We seen that they were here. Then we find out through colonialism while we trying to expand through Spain. Oh, y'all over there too. And y'all the same person, but y'all got masculinity intact. Y'all got masculinity intact over there. We have to attack your masculine component. We don't want you analyzing and deconstructing in this world, because that's what made y'all produce sciences. That's what made y'all produce the arts. That's what made y'all produce the necessary things that we use to function. Analysis and deconstruction. That shit didn't just fall in from some divine, but we gonna make it look like it was some divine ordinance that you ain't had nothing to do with. We're gonna establish patriarchy, and we're gonna make sure patriarchy completely erase masculinity. But we're going to blind it in such a way that people think patriarchy and masculinity are the same thing. Patriarchy is allowing a father to reserve as the figurehead. But it removes analysis and deconstruction. You don't look at any of the father figureheads that are in any religious text. Like now, when you look at the people that deliver the message to you, the pastors and shit, they don't deliver the information. They deliver a good feeling. That's the way it's always been. It's called a sophist. They have a perfect way of delivering the message a certain way to make you feel good, but still keep you bound, because now you don't think for yourself. I think for you. Let me give you my thoughts on what this is. Like, people be trying to invite me to Bible study and shit, and it's like, no, he can't talk to me. He can't indoctrinate me the way he indoctrinates y'all. Y'all read this shit to feel good. That's why when I point out certain shit within the very book, people look at me like, that's not the context. No, that's not the context you have to believe in. Nigga, that's what they wrote. That's what it says. You feel what I'm saying? Back to the point that I was making about the Bible verse that says ye are gods. Motherfuckers will argue that's not the context that it meant, because you don't want to be a god? What? Why not? Why not? That's not what that meant. Well, Jesus then went back and doubled back in John 10 and 31 and said, your doctrine says ye are gods. Don't ask me if I'm a god. What does your word say? He tried to tell them niggas, you are gods too. But you don't want to be gods. You feel me? You want to be sheep. You're comfortable being a sheep. Like, that's what that book teaches you, to be a sheep. Jesus is your shepherd. Now, if Jesus is your shepherd, that means your pastor has to be your shepherd too. But y'all are the flock. Y'all call yourself, the congregation is called the flock. Masculinity has to be completely gone when you can actually hear the words at this particular point and you can't analyze and deconstruct that you're being insulted. That shit different. That shit different. But until we step into that space and we start actually learning how to reanalyze and deconstruct shit, what do? We shun intelligence. We shun intelligence. Now, when I say when black boys are not an unrespected black boy grows up to be a disrespectful black man. Most of our boys are intelligent as fuck, but we don't promote intelligence at all. I don't know how we value ignorance, but as long as you don't promote intelligence and you don't value ignorance, you're gonna diminish masculinity. Because as So Frail 2 put, and I broke it down to So Frail 2, intelligence is a cornerstone of masculinity. That's how you analyze and deconstruct shit. When you're not giving your child the ability to analyze and deconstruct, you emasculate him. Now when you emasculate him, you just mad that he goes around looking for respect. His respect comes from what he can analyze and deconstruct. Don't even know that shit. But you don't give him the capacity to analyze and deconstruct shit. Because he's not attentive. He's hyper. Our boys are designed far ahead of this. Like, come on, bro. We're ahead of these motherfuckers, bro. And then somehow we get mentally retarded. Because we go and we level out against the motherfuckers that we were ahead of when we came out of the womb. Shit don't make no motherfucking sense, bro. But again, this is how this plays out. The patriarchy, masculinity, religion. We want to say that religion is designed to control the people. It's deeper than that. It's designed to neutralize masculinity. If you neutralize masculinity, the people are easy to control because nobody will think. And the people who do think, they'll get called crazy until they stop thinking because they don't want to be crazy no more. You have to have a certain depth within yourself to not give a fuck and continue to think regardless of what motherfuckers do and constantly develop and say, fuck y'all, I'm going to think anyway. Y'all can eat a dick. It is what it is. But the ostracization, that's what's crazy because now, and even then, when you get there, because the cult is so powerful that it's called culture, but the religious code is so powerful that you don't even know that it's a religious code because it's normal. Everybody's in this normalcy, not thinking, just believing some shit. Niggas really think the sky is going to crack. Now, here's another piece to that. Because now you say when the sky cracks, everybody's going to see him at one time. I don't know his height, but I can only imagine. I'm 6'2". You feel me? Now imagine if I'm 6'2" and the sky cracks and I descend from the sky, how is everybody across the world going to see me at the same time? We know time zones. We know the different positions of the sun. Everybody, there's moments when there's light in the sun and there's light on the earth and there's darkness on the earth. How is everybody going to see this entity and this being at the same time? Again, niggas don't even realize the allegory. Niggas don't even realize the joke. Niggas don't even realize that this is all mythology. It wasn't supposed to be like that. But now I'm going to convince you to believe it. I'm going to convert you into it. I'm not going to teach you to understand it. But I'm going to teach you that if you regurgitate it enough, that you'll have a spot in a place that doesn't exist. Nobody can, masculinity really steps into the field and says, you know what? Nobody can validate whether heaven or hell is real. Everybody assumed that when their loved one dies, they went to heaven. Are you healing from childhood trauma from that person? They might not be there. Are you healing from a repetitive cycle that they helped initiate? They might not be there. Now, if you have a loved one that has transitioned, I'm not trying to, shit on that and be, a rude asshole or nothing like that. I'm speaking on the context of how the religion plays out because it creates the ego that makes us think we're all chosen. That is the greatest mind fuck ever. Everybody can't be chosen, especially when heaven only has a population of 144,000 people. 12,000 per tribe. Ugh, niggas don't even know what tribe they are. And the tribe they think they are is the wrong tribe. Because again, when you understand that the tribe, when you understand the tribe shit, it falls out. When you understand the actual book, everything falls out. When you understand that black people were indigenous to this land, it already falls out. That shit no longer exists. So the concept of heaven and hell no longer exists. You don't have to wait for the aftermath because you're realizing that, oh, they're taking their heaven on earth and they're going to give me hell on earth to have their heaven. But I'm going to let you believe that as long as you endure this hell on earth, you'll have heaven. Said by a motherfucker who knows that they're inflicting hell on you and they're not worried about going to hell. The very motherfucker that inflicted the religion on you, that gave you the religion, that is inflicting the atrocities on you, has not even a single inkling of the fear of a deity. And you do? And you do. Because masculinity is gone. The spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment of the essence of analysis and deconstruction. Motherfuckers ain't breaking shit down no more. They're not reading this shit to understand it. They're reading this shit to go convert another motherfucker and remain in this cult. This is the cult. Cults are created based off of offshoots of these religions. But when the cults start getting crazy, that's when the government, that's when the people step in. They say, yo, you fucking up the vibe, man. We got these people by the palm of our hands. Stop sexually assaulting people, sexually abusing people, doing these other things with the cult. Nigga, here's the cult. We're going to make people believe in this shit. We're never going to tell them what's real. I'm going to say this. I'm really going to wrap it up. When you realize that one day for God is 1,000 years for man, and they put that in the book, you were never supposed to get out of this shit. You were never supposed to understand this shit for real. Because it was meant to do this. It was meant to make sure you have no conceptualization of time. It was meant to make sure that you remain in a state of belief forever. And that's the biggest problem we have to deal with. Masculinity does not allow belief to exist. Masculinity transitions belief into understanding by way of moving it to knowledge. Then once the knowledge is moved, it goes back into femininity to create experience because you have to synthesize and construct. Then from the experience, you now analyze and deconstruct again, and you get into understanding. And then now you can move into acceptance or rejection. There's a ping pong between belief being femininity, knowledge being masculinity, experience being femininity, understanding being masculinity. But these are the 4 levels of the mind. And this is why I always say, when you heard me say it, even when I wrote it in the book, it's not levels. These are just 4 points. It's almost like the Ninja Turtles. They're 4 points of the mind. The Ninja Turtles aren't necessarily stronger or weaker than the other, despite having Leonardo as the leader. But they're 4 separate entities. Belief, knowledge, you get stuck at belief and never use 3 of the other entities of your mind. You see what I'm saying? All because masculinity is gone. So when they say where the real masculine man at, they don't want the real masculine man at, because now when we really show up, we make motherfuckers think, we challenge people's thoughts, they hate us. Kendrick Lamar just did the Super Bowl and motherfucker said, I do not want to think. Like, nigga. And that doesn't tell you the way the world wants you to be. You feel what I'm saying? That's where the problem has always been. And that's where the problem is always going to remain. And it's always going to remain there as long as we still have the final shackle on our brains and our minds and our souls, which is religion. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Go kiss your babies. Make sure they eat the vegetables. And our sons, because this is So Frail Conversations, our sons, don't take away their ability to analyze and deconstruct their world. I ain't telling y'all don't send them to it. Like, teach them to understand the religion that you want them to follow. Don't just make them believe it. Don't just start indoctrinating them so young and telling them, oh, when you get older, you'll actually break down. No. The moment you start putting it in their motherfucking head, start teaching them the right way. Which means you got to understand it. Which means you got to go back to the languages. Which means you got to understand everything. And it's not just a matter of impressing it upon them. Making them memorize shit. No, make them actually understand this shit. When they ask you questions about it, oh no, you don't question God. I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning your information about this deity, about this religion. I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning you. Now you see how the tiers work? You can't even question the motherfucker who don't know what they talking about. You can't even question the motherfucker who's getting their information from another motherfucker who's getting their information from another motherfucker who claims that they've been ordained by a deity don't nobody know. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. That's a cult, my nigga. That's a fucking cult. But if everybody's in the cult, nobody's in the cult. You feel what I'm saying? Because niggas is in a different cult. And that's where the problem comes in. Because cult becomes culture. And as long as it's culture and nobody's challenging the culture, everything's fine. But the moment you start questioning the cult, questioning what's happening, we got a problem. You're a heretic. You're worshiping the devil. You're demonic. You're this, that, and the third. Like I tell people, if I don't fuck with the religion, I don't fuck with anything associated with religion. So if I'm not fucking with the God, I'm not fucking with the devil either. They the same nigga, bro. They come from the same shit. But again, you have to be in a space of analyzing and deconstructing to be able to really comprehend that point. Our boys need to be in a space where they can start analyzing and deconstructing and being respected for analyzing and deconstructing and using their fucking intelligence. We want to get out of the situation. We have to raise our boys correctly. We have to raise our boys correctly, not continuing to follow their doctrine of let the boys be boys until they get older and then, whatever, figure life out on your own. No, you have to walk into analysis and deconstruction. I have the rites of passage. I have the entire setup in the So Frail 3 book. Because what we have to do now is we have to get our boys into the point of intelligence and analyzing and deconstructing, using their intelligence correctly. You feel what I'm saying? And from the analysis and deconstruction, they can start being respected for it, which means they're no longer going out to be respected for doing what? Toxic feminine shit. Because spinning it back to what I was saying, there's 3 types of men: the heterosexual man, the homosexual man who likes vagina, and the homosexual man who doesn't like vagina. Nigga. They the same nigga. One just fucks and the other one doesn't. But then the heterosexual man gets lumped into with the homosexual man who doesn't like vagina. But the homosexual man who doesn't like vagina is one of the epitomes of the toxic feminine man. He's destructive as shit. He doesn't have sex to have babies and procreate and to actually pour into a woman. He has sex to destroy the womb. And where did you get that from? Colonization, missionaries. When you come over to the land, this is what you're doing. And then even still, under the name of this religion, in the name of these deities, they put us in breeding farms, my nigga. I got a podcast episode on that, breeders. And we never stop being breeders. We never stop being breeders, bro. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. But that comes into what we're being tied to. Because in the name of the deity they impressed upon us, this was okay. This was okay. We follow the same religion we followed when we was considered 3/5 of a human being. We follow the same religion that we followed when we was ripped apart and ripped like for 400 years. I'm 35. I'll be 35 next month. Imagine, I was religious for 25 years, and I was heavy in the religion for 25 years until I actually woke up and analyzed and deconstruct when my masculinity came back. Imagine 400 years. 35 years is a long time. Imagine 400. And that's what it was meant to do. If we want our circumstance to change, we have to free our boys from religion. That's the answer. That's the answer. Free our boys from religion and truly teach them masculinity. I stand on that. I go toe to toe with anybody. Any religious figure you give me, I'll go toe to toe with him about it, and I will show the degrees of separation of what it is when you step in against masculinity, the real one. Spiritual, mental, and physical embodiment, the essence of analysis and deconstruction, and when you go on against patriarchy. It's not the same. The father, the figurehead who's playing the father. That's what patriarchy is. It's not the same as masculinity. It's not. But our boys, once they can walk into masculinity, the rest of this shit changes. I promise you. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Go kiss your babies. Make sure they eat their vegetables, and I'll see y'all all on the next one. Peace, love, knowledge, and freedom. I'm out.